Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money in the Law, MyFM 101.3. I'm your host, John Drohan from Main Effort Financial. I'm joined by my dear esteemed colleague, Jay Marsden from the Marsden Law Group. And of course, we're joined by the illustrious Holliston Cable Access Television, so you can see us and make us look younger. And that, of course, is run by Christian Bidet, who is our senior executive producer. Christian, how you doing? Jay, how you doing?
Tremendous,
Yeah.
tremendous. What are we, 10 days?
You look good today with your cool glasses, your new glasses
10
on.
days out? Come
Yep.
on, 10 days out? No, 9, 8 days out.
It's 8 days. It's
8 days out.
It's a week. It's
Eight,
a
7.
week
No,
from
it's a
tomorrow.
week. It's a week.
Yep.
7 days out. All right.
7 days out. And what are you referring to?
Well, it's funny. When we last taped the show, which was a week ago, I think we might have had a little bit of political banter. And good morning, everybody, by the way. And we thought, well, you get
Just a regular day.
2 weeks to go. This is usually kind of where you put it on cruise control. Maybe you hang around the White House residence a little bit. Maybe if you haven't used a couple of things in the White House, you get the next 2 weeks to
Check
do
it out, right? Yeah.
My guess is
Go
maybe
use some of the China.
yeah, my guess is maybe the Donald hasn't used the basketball court, or he hasn't swum laps in the pool, or something like that. But hey, whatever. This is the chance. What I hadn't planned on, what I hadn't realized, was one of the things that he hadn't done was try to take over the government.
Right.
And so he figured, I got 2 weeks to go. How many more chances do you get to
Start an armed insurrection?
How many times do you get to use the grill out back, which he hasn't used yet? And that's right, storm the Capitol. So here we are. So we're a week later.
What
and,
am I going to do? Am I going to use the grill? Well, first I'm going to go outside. I got a couple of my friends out there, about 10,000 of them.
I haven't seen the work that Melania did in the Rose Garden. Let me go check that out. That looks really nice. And oh, hey, by the way, I brought some friends. Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So what Jay is referring to, so for those of you who are the true fans of the show, know that we tape this on a Wednesday. So a week ago Wednesday, we're here in the morning, and so everything's just getting going down in D.C. Right? This is on the 6th of January, which is now one of those dates, right? It's one of those days that you're going to remember.
Yeah.
And so we're here and we're doing our thing, having a great time, and right, and it was about 2 hours later. I'm driving in the car, and I listen to this. I'm on when I'm not listening to my FM 101.3. So I want to catch up on some sports, right? So I'm on the sport, and the sports guys are talking about, there's an armed insurrection at the Capitol as we speak, and I'm like, what? Yeah. And then you go home, and then we watch it all day for the rest of the day on TV.
I'm talking to a buddy of mine, and he says to me, "Are you near a TV?" And I'm thinking to myself, "Okay, that never ends well, right?" I said, "No, but I could be."
Right.
He goes, "Do me a favor, pop the TV on, would you?" "Yeah, sure." I popped the TV on. I'm like, "Whoa, what is going on here?"
Right, and there you are, and so I texted you. I'm like, "Are you watching this?"
Exactly. Yeah. Are you watching this attempted coup so that the government? So a couple of things that were interesting was, first of all, 2 weeks ago.
Is that legal? I mean, speaking of this, since we do cover things that have to do with the law.
Oh, my God. So speaking of, we'll talk money in the law, right? So not legal, okay, not legal, all right? Sedition, armed insurrection, things that the government frowns on, and so does the...
He's not allowed to do that.
No, they don't like it. Now, I'm all about the First Amendment. I'm all about freedom of speech. I'm all about being able to exercise your rights, and if you've got a grievance with the government, and you want to make your voice heard, I am all about that.
All day.
A lot of that happens at the ballot box, and so that's great. You vote with your feet, and that's what you do. You go and you vote, and you make your voice heard. What I'm not a fan of is this armed insurrection thing. I think it leaves. I think it leaves.
Just the way it rolls off the tongue. What I'm not a fan of, right? It's what I'm not a fan of is this imitation margarine thing. I'm not a fan of that. And I'm not a fan of this all gluten-free stuff.
I know. I can believe it's not butter. I can believe it's not butter. But this was. I mean, this. And then I was telling Ray before the show, before you got here. And then after, you were watching it in real time, which is in and of itself, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
And then you watched the whole thing unfold. And then the next day, and then as the news reports come in, then you start to really get a sense of what the possible outcomes
the
look
gravity
like.
of it. That's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, we were watching the 60 Minutes thing over the weekend, and look, whether you're a Nancy Pelosi fan or not, my wife said to me, what could you have imagined if they ever somehow, those people who had stormed the Capitol, ever somehow physically got a hold of her at the Capitol? Like,
Right.
like what
What are
would
they
the
going to
outcome
do?
have been, right?
What are they going to do? Right.
And what would the outcome have been if somebody grabbed, Mike Pence, right? I mean, all those things. And just seeing the optics of just these random individuals, this is the stuff that, I mean, you were in the military, so you've been overseas, you've seen, other places in action. But this was the equivalent of seeing, and pick whatever country you want, whatever first world, second world, third world, after the government leaves, if you will, after they chase them out, and then whoever's been being governed storms the presidential castle, right? And they all start just grabbing stuff and walking out the door. It's exactly what it was. It was like watching, pick any movie that Hollywood puts together. It was just unbelievable to see these people in the seat of government sitting in these chairs, like thinking everything's a big joke, and walking around with zip ties and all the tactical gear. And I mean, it was, again, you're so busy watching it. You're so busy looking at it, and it's like a train wreck. You say, so I can't turn away. But upon reflection, if you really step back and think about it, a very, very dark moment, obviously in U.S. history.
I try to I tried to just like you, I try to get my head around it as I'm watching it, right? So as you're watching it, and when you're watching something like this, just like if for those of you who remember watching the 9/11, right?
Yeah.
So 9/11 was another one of those like world events where you're just watching it all day long on TV, right? If you're lucky you weren't down there in New York City. So everybody's watching it all day long on TV, and they're watching, all the, everything that's happening. Like they watch the second tower come down, and they watch they're trying to get all the, information and the news there. And so, I can remember as you're watching that, you're like, okay, so all you're trying to do is see some good news, right? You're trying to say, okay, maybe this isn't as bad as we think. Right. Maybe this isn't, maybe there's, and it's like a human nature kind of thing. So the same thing was happening last week. So they're like, well, they're showing pictures from, that people were posting on social media, and they're saying that, I remember when I first turned the TV on, it was all of the representatives and all the senators, all the Congress people are safe. Like they're out and they're safe. So so then they're like, okay, so immediately you think, okay, well they're safe, and then
so you immediately think continuity of government, right? Continuity of government, that's great. That's what we hope for, right? That's what we've all been brought up to believe.
But just like you're like, okay, so it's not like there's shots being fired. It's not like this is we're witnessing like a mass shooting or anything. It's not like this. When we say an armed insurrection, it's not like there's gunfire that's being. So you're like, okay, and then. But here's the other thing which blows my mind. So as soon as I turn the television on, and I know that there are people that have broken into the Capitol building, right? So in their minds, maybe they think I'm allowed to do this because it's part of a protest. So whatever the reason is that they think. There's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. So I go into kind of like the military, how do I secure this building, right? It just happens to be the Capitol building. Yep. And there's thousands upon thousands and thousands of people that are around the outside. Like if it was some kind of an armed insurrection, imagine if it was like a school where they were shooting at. And people had to get in there. They people couldn't get in there because there were people that were. All the people that are just hanging around outside, and those people, they were like, "Hey, I'm okay, I'm cool, I'm not part of this, I'm not doing anything, I didn't break anything, right?
I haven't crossed the threshold,
exactly, right?
I haven't smashed a window, I haven't stolen a podium.
All I'm doing is just standing outside, like chanting Trump,
waving a flag,
and so I'm not, and so that's the part of it that's the part of it that where I'm like, everybody, you contributed to this.
Oh yeah.
And so so that's a great point, because as you're watching in real time, you're like, yeah, I just want to know what's happening inside, and I want, and there's people on the phone, and they're like interviewing people, like, oh, we're okay, and the Congress people are in and they're in the bunker and all this other stuff, but as the days unfold, you're looking at like, wait a minute, this is all of it was criminal. Like the fact that, so imagine let's say, and right, we go back to the First Amendment, right. And I too, the First Amendment, it's an important, it's great, right? So if I want to go and protest something, I can go protest it, right?
All day long.
All day. So if I'm practicing my First Amendment rights, right? And then all of a sudden, I see like criminal activity being, and this goes the same with like the things that happen in Portland or with Black Lives Matter. Like if all of a sudden, if I'm there,
Right.
and they start blowing up a police station,
Yeah.
and I'm there, then you know what, I'm connected to that.
Oh, you're very connected to that.
And
Yes.
so that crosses that line. That crosses that like, okay, it's one thing to exercise my First Amendment rights. It's another thing to do public damage or to put people in danger or God forbid hurt or injure or
Yep.
kill somebody.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where and that's what happens. And that's what a lot of people will say. Look, I support your right to say whatever you want, right? But once stuff starts getting broken and windows start getting smashed and people start getting hurt or killed, that changes the entire. Just the overall sense of,
Well, yeah, because now it's a safety issue.
Maybe we've crossed the line here.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to think a little bit differently about this. Maybe this isn't right. And then after the fact, you get a number of elected officials who still think, whatever, it's no big deal, whatever. We can talk ourselves into how we weren't responsible for this, and then we can still keep on keeping on.
Well, you had the number one elected official who started the whole thing. He was like, "Yep, you know what? Hey, you know what? Just everybody go home. We just want peace.
Yep,
Hey,
be cool, everybody. Be
yep.
cool. Yep. I just, I don't know. It's amazing, and this is, and if you're looking at it from, like, again, money in the law, right? This is what we talk about on the show. We talk about, there's certain risks out there that you just can't plan for. We've talked about this all this year about last year, how you couldn't plan for the pandemic. Nobody had armed insurrection at the Capitol in their first quarter 2021 business plan, and obviously, thank God, cooler heads prevailed. But this is the stuff that again, the markets don't like things that they don't understand and they
Right.
can't control, and they don't like inconsistency, and they don't like. And this is the type of stuff that makes people say, "What's going on here? What kind of operation are we running?" And maybe things aren't as secure as we thought. Maybe everybody gets a little skittish and says, "We don't know what's going to happen." Now we start taking a lot of money off the table. This is how things spiral into the market goes down. People start to, there's a whole another chain of events that potentially follow this if that had really happened. I mean, this is what happened after 9/11. I mean, after 9/11, the markets froze. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't make any changes. Couldn't get your money.
Right.
If you wanted to get your money
Right.
was locked up.
Yeah, because
right?
because no one knew what was happening.
That's right.
Yeah, we're like, okay, wait a minute. So it's Wednesday the 13th right now. So in a week, if something else happens, if there's and there's kind of these premonitions out there that there may be more events
What trouble
that
where
are
that
happening.
came from? Yeah.
So if something else happens, or this turns into some sort of that's much more organized, other than just kind of this what seemed like a seemingly spontaneous thing that happened last week, then you could definitely see some real economic reaction, and that could be reflected in in the market and on the political landscape.
And the next week could be very low key in the sense that everybody's sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop, hoping it doesn't drop, and then we get past the 20th and we say, okay, now things get a little bit more predictable, right? We have a little bit of a better sense on how the next administration might respond to certain things and where they put their effort into getting things. It becomes it's whether you, again, however you feel about it politically, it becomes this devil and we sort of know what to expect, because right now all bets are off, right? We have no idea what to expect. Everybody's on kind of pins and needles trying to figure out what's going to happen. And just crazy stuff.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk more money in the law and political upheaval here on My FM 101.3 with Jay Marsden and John Drouin, Hollis Cable Access TV. Don't go away. We'll be back.
And we're back. Money in the Law, My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John Drohan, Main Effort Financial. Christian steering us through the cosmos, making the magic happen. On the law front, we'll go back and talk about actual topics that relate to the show as opposed to.
I was going to say, you as a practicing attorney, did you dust off the Constitution and just review it? I mean, I would think that as a lawyer, I would be like, it's time. It's time for me to just make sure that there's nothing that I'm missing here, because who knows? You could get the call. Someone may call you up and say, hey, I just need a consult. I just have a question about something.
Well, you know what's funny? So there was again, we've talked about like there's all kinds of stuff on social media, but there was a couple of guys, I think they were down in Florida. It's always Florida, right? There's a couple of guys down in Florida, and they're the attorneys for the guy who was carrying the lectern, out of the Capitol.
What did I do wrong?
Right?
Why is that a problem?
And so, of course, there's a picture of
public
him with
property.
the lectern over his shoulder, big smile on his face. He's walking through the hallway of the Capitol. And so
is he from Florida as well?
So the attorneys, of course, are out front, and so the guy, one of the reporters is asking him a question. He's like, well, just kind of like, real quick, we're just kind of curious, like, what's your game plan here when there's a picture of your client in the Capitol carrying a lectern over his shoulder, walking out the front door? What's your strategy here, basically, right? And so the guys are standing there, and thank God they had their masks on, because I'm sure they were like,
laughing. Yeah.
And he's like, well, again, he says, yes. He said, is it a challenge to have a picture of your client in the Capitol carrying a lectern, which is what he's being charged with, destruction of property and theft? He says, it doesn't make it any easier. He goes, and I'm not a magician. I'm not a magician, he says. So, we'll kind of have to see where this goes, right? And then, okay, sure, and they do, they do talk about this. When you're in law school, it's like, if you have the facts on your side, argue the facts. If you have, this is on your side, argue this. And if there's nothing on your side, just argue something, right? Just come up with something.
It's almost that's why we're here, right?
Yes.
That's what brought us here, right? That's what brought us to this point because remember, the driving force behind all of this is that the president of the United States felt that the election, his presidential election, was in some way, shape, or form was incorrect.
Right, but remember, incorrect only for the ballots that affected him.
And not even getting into the details.
But every other ballot that affected everybody else who got elected, those ballots are fine. It was just him, just the him part of it.
Yeah. So all that, like, just it's almost like when you take a step back and you look at the 30,000-foot view, you're like, what? Like, this is. Can you imagine like what people in other countries are saying right now? They're like, what? Like, how?
What's
how
going
is that
on over there? Yeah.
And so so he goes to the mat on it and really goes to the mat and it's like, no, this is wrong. This was fraudulent. There were some kind of discrepancies here, and then and so there it is. So there's, and the argument, like you said, is if I don't have a case, if I don't have facts on my side, or I don't have evidence on my side, then I'm just going to argue for the sake of arguing.
Yes, that's what you're going to do.
Right, and the problem is that people bought into it. People bought into it because just like if I sat here and told you and said, Jay, I was a professional baseball player. I played professional baseball. I played professional baseball for the New York Yankees for 5 seasons. And I told
Won a World Series.
And I told you that.
And a batting title.
I told you that from the minute I met you. And so to the point where you're like, well, I looked at the Yankees roster because they have this thing called the internet, and I looked at that, and you weren't on the team. But yes, I was, and here's the reason why, because they didn't put, whatever excuse
I missed pitcher
gave.
day. I missed pitcher day.
Exactly.
I was sick that day. I didn't make it. It's like school.
Exactly. And I told you this. I told you this for years and years and years. At some point, you're going to either do one of two things. You're going to say, okay, I like you, but you are insane, and you everything that I'm sorry, but you have some kind of like this. You have some kind of delusional problem, or you're going to believe me. You're going to say, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what's happened is like people.
This is it. You're exactly right.
They bought into this, and they're like, hey, oh well. If he says it, and he's really saying it with conviction, then therefore, and again, the other part of it is, I want to believe it too. Like,
well, and not only that, but then when I'm at a party with you, and you start going off on your New York Yankees story, and I come up with somebody, and I go, look, here's the team picture from the '94 Yankees, and by the way, he's not on it, right? He's not 94. On it. And then you say, or somebody says, well, me, I'm a liar, or you're just making that up, or you're just trying to hurt John, or you're not John's friend. And
somebody corroborates my story,
and I'm like, what? I'm like, what are you talking? Like, you are correct. At some point, you would say, okay, I'm going to call Cuckoo on this, and we're going to wrap it up. Right? Let's get our coach. Check, please. We're out of here. Like, I can't do it. At some point, you would say, I just can't live in that fantasy land.
Right. And then apply that to the real world. So at some point you would expect the duly elected officials, the people who their responsibility, they are public servants. They are serving the people of their country.
They take an oath
Exactly.
to uphold the Constitution.
Right.
And by the way, a gigantic chunk of them are lawyers.
Yeah. like real lawyers.
Like legit lawyers.
Like lawyers that are still call themselves a lawyer, right? And isn't there some kind of thing where if you as a lawyer start say something that isn't true, that you get in some kind of lawyer trouble?
Well, yeah. I mean, they don't have lawyer jail, but you know what they do? They take your bar card away, right? And then guess what? And then you're not a lawyer anymore, right? It's very simple.
Then you used to be a lawyer.
That's right. That's right. Then you are called a disbarred, a former attorney.
Sounds good.
The court, and this is actually funny because you saw this play out throughout all of those challenges, all of those legal challenges that went on all the way up until probably today, right? So at some point, somebody would get up to a microphone and they would spin some outlandish tale, right? And everybody would lean in and they would take the picture and they would record it and then they would run it on the news that night and everybody would go, oh my God.
Yeah.
And then they would get into court and a judge would say, Counselor, real quick. So I need to find out, first of all, is what you're telling me, is this in the pleadings that you filed with the court? Because it looks different. It seems that what the argument you're making now seems to be different than the argument that you made on CNN last night. And then the attorney goes, well, Your Honor, the pleadings kind of speak for themselves, blah, 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 blah. And the answer is exactly what you just said, which is, I am not going to sign my name to a piece of paper that says, under the pains and penalties of perjury, you have to make a statement to the court that says, I believe what we're actually doing, because the court wants no business with you just going in and wasting its time, right? So they're like, if it's real, if it's legit, that's fine. But if you're just making stuff up, we don't want that.
Yeah, the judge says again, okay, so one more time, let's just say it with me. So you do not think there was any fraud in this, in whatever, pick the state election. Yeah. And the attorney says, no, we're not saying that there was fraud. However, blah, blah, blah. But let me stop right there. So no fraud. That's what you're saying, right? And yes, Your Honor, that's what the pleading said. Yeah.
That's right. Because first of all, for all the obvious reasons, you never lie to the judge, ever, right? You're going to come in and you're going to make the case, right? You're going to make the case.
Yeah.
And so this stuff combined with, while we're on the politics piece, why not? Let's run with it. Did you listen to the conversation with the guys in Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's. Yeah. I was mentioning this also to Ray.
Right, which now has become such old news.
Old news. How about no news? I mean, let's talk about this news for 1 second.
Because I listened to it the day before. The day before.
Let's talk about what never got above the fold, as they say in the newspaper business. Right? Let's talk about this. Okay. The recording, right? Not a rehash of what I remember the conversation to be.
Recorded, yeah.
Not a transcript, not a he said, she said, none of that. The recording of the President of the United States calling an elected official in a state, talking about the results of the election, and literally asking this individual to just flat out go find the exact number of votes plus one that I need to win your state. We always talk about manufacturing money on the show. This guy wants him to go out and manufacture some votes. Yeah. I mean, in anything that resembles a normal year, that would be a gigantic news story.
Yeah, that's not only is it a gigantic news story, but go back a year and you look at what the president was impeached for.
Yes.
He was impeached for that kind of that same type of thing where he was trying to influence or do some sort of provide some influence on a foreign official, right?
And in exchange for money.
Yeah. And you can't do that. And now it's the same type of thing where I'm going to try and bully you into doing something that's illegal to benefit me, just to purely benefit me.
Threats, intimidation, bullying, influence, power of the office. I mean, just that in and of itself. And when you hear the audio tape, again, I find it just chilling. As you know, this
It was an hour-long conversation.
This is stuff, hour-long conversation, and then they interview the guys afterwards, and they're like, "So, what do you think about those allegations?" And they're like, "You mean those completely insane, fantastical, Fantasyland accusations? You mean those ones?" Yeah. Let me tell you what I think about those. I just told you what I think about those. That's the story. And this hasn't even seen the light of day. He's going to get impeached for inciting insurrection. Never mind trying to basically cajole, bully, browbeat. I mean, fill out the list of another elected official in another state to change the outcome of an election. To change the outcome
of his election.
Of an election.
Of
his election.
Of his election. Yeah.
To turn back the will of the voters, right? Yeah. The entire system is based on that. Right? I mean, it's just
that's true, and that's the, you know, all along. This is what everybody's saying. Like, look, you know, it's been, you know, over the past year, over the past, you know, in the whole administration, things have been upended. But at the end of the day, the one thing that we have, the one thing that the country has, is what it's built on, which is the Constitution. And there's been all these arguments about, oh, well, you know, uphold the Constitution, make America great again, and this, you know, we need to bring America back. No. America is clearly defined in that document. And you know what? If there's any questions, we have a whole judiciary system that is designed to interpret that Constitution.
We have a whole process that governs this entire exercise. It governs this entire, you know, concept. And once you start picking and choosing, once you start saying, well, you know, that doesn't really benefit me, right? But the whole experiment is based on that document. You're exactly right. That's what the whole thing is based on. And if you start saying, well, that stuff doesn't really matter, and that stuff doesn't matter, and then here's the other thing. And well, we'll take a break in a minute, and then we'll come back to this, because I just the process here is the important part, right? The process is, look, you know, everybody had a chance to be heard, right? That's how it works, right? Everybody went out, everybody pulled the lever, they checked the box, they did what they had to do, and they said, look, this is what we think, this is what we want to have happen, right? I mean, that is what this entire, you know, that's what people have fought and died for. That's what people have, you know, that's what people kill themselves to come to this country for, because they want all the freedoms and all the liberties and all the options that we offer, that we hold out to the entire rest of the globe about. This is what makes us different. Right. This is what makes us great. And then to literally turn around and just put your thumb on the scale and say, well, it only makes it great if it's great the way we want it to be great. It just darkens the whole concept. I just find it fascinating, and I don't know. I was very saddened by the whole incident for all of those reasons. That I just thought, you know, we've always sort of prided ourselves on being better than that, you know, and I don't know. I was just sad.
All right. Well, we'll come back. We're gonna cheer you up. Okay. We're gonna cheer you up.
I'm not done.
We're gonna come back. We're gonna take a short break. We'll be right back on Money in the Law. Jay Marsden, John Drohan, My FM 101.3, House and Cable Access TV. Don't go away. We'll be right back for Money, Law, and Politics, and real important politics.
And we're back. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group, Money in the Law, My FM 101.3. John Drohan, Christian, sitting here talking politics after the big week. Go ahead.
Before we get back into politics, we did promise that Christian was going to give us his New Year's resolution, right? Because last year was a little.
I think he said it was avoid. I think he said it was avoid politics.
Right. Now, so Christian's New Year's, and I'm paraphrasing, but Christian's New Year's resolution is he felt that COVID may have made him a little bit, I wouldn't say lazy, maybe lackadaisical, you know, maybe took a little of the wind out of his sails.
A more cavalier outlook on life.
Maybe slowed him down a little bit. So his New Year's resolution. So we're saying it on the radio and on TV now. So you kind of have to do it. Like there's no, you're not getting out of this. So he is committed to whatever it is, no matter how seemingly insignificant. He's going to try and do at least one productive thing every day. All right.
All
So
right.
we're gonna. So you better write this stuff down because we're
So
gonna hold
I
you
want
to
to
it.
know what, at the end of the year, I want to know what
better be
365
right.
productive things you've done.
Or more. That's
Keep
the,
track.
365
Keep
is the
track.
baseline.
You
that's
can do two. You
That's
can
the
do
bottom.
two.
Yeah, you
Yep.
can do 5 in a day.
Yep.
And I don't think
Not just business days. This is all days, 7
yeah,
days.
right. Not right. And,
No holidays.
yeah, and that's the other thing is if you do like say 11 in one day, that you don't get credit. You can't push that forward. No, you
No.
start at
One-
0
per day.
every morning. Yeah,
Per day.
Yeah,
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Every day. So that's good.
By
I
the
like
way,
it.
speaking of that, I do have to wish you a very happy birthday.
That's right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
53 years old.
Right, and I thank you for that. Yep.
Looking every day of it.
Thanks
every day of
thanks
it.
for if people
Yep.
were wondering.
Yep,
Now
yep,
they know.
Yep. Well, you can't tell with the mask. The mask hides it.
That's
Yep,
right,
Pull
that's
it off.
right,
Yep,
yeah.
pull it off. But the hair of an 18-year-old.
The hair of, well, you know what? Again, the hair is another issue. For those of you in radio land, just be glad you're listening to the radio. So, again, I'm a little gun shy about, but at some point it's going to change.
You're not carrying around one of those like switchblade combs that you like pull that thing out and flip it up and just use that to pull that back.
Today is my birthday, in case
Ooh,
anybody wants to
great
make it,
gift.
because I don't
Great
have one of those,
gift,
right?
surprise. Great gift.
Every kid in the world had one of those growing up, right?
Absolutely.
So cool.
In case you get in trouble.
So,
In case it was
so
a rumble.
cool, right?
Yeah, that's right.
right. In case some guys came up, kids would rumble.
right.
Comb my hair first, right?
Comb their hair, whatever.
Yep.
Depending on what your career goals were. It's all good.
All right.
It's all good.
All right, let's get back to the topic at hand. It's important.
So we're talking money and law and politics today, and so this is my post-armed insurrection fear, is that the people who enabled this, and I'm not even talking about the people who were sort of out there, boots on the ground, running around the Capitol. I mean, they're going to get their comeuppance, but there's
Yeah, they are.
oh yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, there's this thing. There's this group. They're called the FBI.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Knock, knock, knock. Hi,
Yeah.
is John there? Hi, John. How was D.C.? What do you mean? And they're printing out all your social media that you decided to
They're
show.
showing you some pictures, right?
You show yourself standing in Nancy's office, right?
Rodney
waving around the
Dangerfield
flag.
talking to Adrienne Barbeau. Yeah, hey, here's you, and here's you and Fredo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, but my concern is that at the upper echelons, in terms of a governmental approach, and the people who really sort of institutional enablers of this entire thing, and what we talked about before was, the people who didn't stand up and say, I'm sorry, the election wasn't stolen. There's been 60 court cases that have proven that. You've never put one iota of evidence on the table.
Yeah.
There's politicians who, before this whole thing happened, thought it'll be fun and cute to just object to the election results because this is going to be fun and it's
we're going to go along with this.
Yep,
We're
it's going to endear me my base, right?
Stay with the party lines. We're going to stay with our. We're going to motivate our people, right? To, stay with the cause.
Yep,
It's
stay
important.
energized, everybody, right?
Yep.
This too shall pass. This too shall pass. So then, after they ran for their lives, while being protected by people who work for the government and who get paid for by your tax dollars, my tax dollars, everybody's tax. After those people got the protections that they needed because of the fight, if you will, that they sort of put on themselves, then afterwards it was, oh yeah, we're still going to keep doing that. That's fine. We're going to keep moving forward.
Because it's important.
And again, look, I'm a lawyer. I love the argument of protect your rights, defend your rights, make sure your rights are honored. Don't let anybody take your rights away. But we're talking about two different things. We're talking about fantasy land and we're talking about reality.
Yeah.
And and if there's something that really needs, if there were mistakes, if there were errors, if there were shenanigans, you put a halt to that and say, no, this thing needs to be investigated. That never happened because there was nothing to investigate.
Right. So play the devil's advocate and say, maybe if there was something, do you not think that there was enough brain power that went into that investigation? It's not like they weren't trying. It's not like they weren't trying to find something.
Yeah.
So one would think that at some point there would be at least something where some judge. This is like, remember, it went to, like you said, there was probably 60 cases where at least some judge would be like, okay, wait, all right, you know what? I'm not totally convinced of this, but I'm not unconvinced of this. So Yep, we're gonna stay in. We're gonna look at that.
You're literally getting your day in court. Let's hear it.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm gonna listen to you. I don't know if I believe it.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, but I'm gonna listen to it. And what you're saying, you're not making absolutely no sense.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And so that didn't happen. So at some point, right? At some point, you have to say, okay, if that didn't happen, if there was nothing there, if there was nothing tangible there, then it doesn't exist. You have at some point you have to make that assumption.
And look, and I everybody believes in the rule of law. If you believe in the rule of law, right? So if you believe in the rule of law, you say, look, if there was an election, and some states have an automatic recount, right, based on how close an election is. If it's within half a percentage point, automatic recount.
Redo.
Great, automatic recount. Now Georgia, they counted 3 times.
Yeah.
3 times. They did a hand count of 5 million votes, right? And again, the continuing, ongoing messaging that something's up. And again, you do the recount, you see what happens. You've seen it, I've seen it. If you're sort of a student of current events, you see these elections that come down to legitimately 100 votes, 50 votes. I mean, for crying out loud, they were talking about some of these things. They're come down to in some of these smaller communities.
Sure.
It's a coin toss, right?
Right.
We're both running for dog catcher. It's 60 votes each, and we got to figure out who's going to win. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that these things get worked up. But if there's really something there, right? Then you go out and you say, look, what's the process? Can we request a recount? Yes, you can request a recount.
Sure.
This is what the process says. You got to pay for it because we've already. Okay, great, we'll pay. If you really care about it, right? All those
3 times.
All those mechanisms exist. All those mechanisms to keep the integrity in the system exist. And when you've run it out, when you've run the table on all those things, at some point you say, hey, you know what? We did the best we could. We thought we had a path here. We don't have a path. It's time to move on.
I mean, go back to 2000. Go back to 2000.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And you look at where that was a close election.
536 votes.
That was as close as you could possibly imagine. And again, remember, we're talking, this is 20 years ago. With 20 years ago, remember the chits? Remember how they did it?
Hanging chads,
It was crazy. And so the state of Florida, they did it, and they checked it, and they double-checked, and they triple-checked it. And guess what? Al Gore's there, and he's like, I won the popular vote. So that means if this was just a popularity contest, but who's the most popular guy in the country? It's me.
Yep.
But based on the laws which I uphold, which I believe in, which I support, I lost this election. I lost this election because one state I lost by 536 votes.
Yeah.
And guess what?
And by the way, and there was more, if you will, there was more there.
Yeah.
Meaning that there was some. There was
a lot more. There was a lot more things you could make a case for.
That's right. There was a much deeper legal argument going on as to whether or not the counting should stay, whether the counting should stop. I mean, there was much more from a legalities perspective of things that needed to get kind of worked out in the system, and we can agree or disagree about sort of the outcome and where it went and how it was very sort of tactical, and depending on where you come out on this, whether or not you thought the right outcome was that the outcome was the correct outcome. But you're right. It was. I mean, you want to talk about razor thin margins, right? So,
but at the end of the day, the outcome was the outcome. And then once it happened, and it was checked, and it was double checked, and everybody said, okay, this is it. This is as good as it's. This is the best we have to offer, and that was it. And Al Gore said, okay. He said, I don't like it. I wish.
But for the good of the country. For the good of the country.
Again, because I am a public servant, right? And a public servant who and remember, Al Gore. So the argument, like the
But
Trump,
think about this, Al Gore. You won the vote. You ran for president, and you won.
Right. So the Trump argument is that, well, if I don't get elected, then I'm not helping my constituents, the people that voted for me.
Sure.
So Al Gore's in the same boat. He had just as many people that voted for him. Like, in fact, more people voted for him.
Yep.
And so it's not like he's like abandoning them. He's like, but for the good of the country, because guess what? The country is them, and it's everybody who didn't vote for me.
Oh, by the way, I think this happened another time too. Oh, that's right, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Same thing happened, right? And at the end of that, it was, hey, look, and at the time, by the way, remember this, at the time when this happened, again, it doesn't matter what side you're on, but just to obviously to illustrate the points and the players, at the time that the election was over in 2016, the people who were on the winning side of the election couldn't say enough about how the losing side of the election needs to just get over it. And
Walk
it's
away.
time to
Yep.
move on. And they showed all these clips about people, for obviously reasons, people get real passionate about this, get emotional about it, upset and crying about the outcome of the election. And so, all right, everybody moved on. They didn't storm the Capitol. They didn't persist in a 5-year
No, they didn't.
in a 4-year campaign of lies and misinformation. They just said, all right, well, you know what, we should have performed better in these states, and we kind of got what we got. That's the end of it, right? So they moved on. They moved on. They weren't happy about it.
Yeah, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton didn't have a big demonstration on the day that they were certifying the Electoral College.
That's right.
They didn't do that, right?
Nope.
I mean, and do you think that they would have had, if they wanted to, could they have had a number of people, like 10,000 people come out to support that?
Sure.
They could have. They didn't do that.
No.
They didn't do that. You know why? Because they didn't say that the election was wrong. They said the election was what the election was.
Oh, there was a lot of the post. There's always the after action report, right? They're always talking about, hey, here's where we lost the election. Here's where it came out. And by the way, not everybody, but a handful of pundits that people followed thought that was a no lose situation. That it was like, this is going to be a piece of cake.
Correct.
This is what's going to happen. And then, it happens. We've talked about this on the show. You always, election day, you're going to write two speeches. It's always two speeches. You never know what's going to happen, right? And so, same thing happened here in Massachusetts, right? Scott Brown beats Martha Coakley.
That's right.
Right? She's asking the Democrats for help. She's like, I had a bruising campaign for the primary. I'm kind of out of money.
Yeah.
And then the Democratic Party was like, wait a minute, you're a Democrat running in Massachusetts for Ted Kennedy's seat. I think you're all set,
Yeah.
right?
How could you lose that?
Right?
Yeah.
And then Brown out hustles her, and then next thing you know, here it is. And, same thing. It wasn't one of those, well, I'm going to stand here and stomp my feet and hold my breath until somebody changes. I mean, again, it's an election. It's counting. It's math.
Yeah.
Right? It's math. It's all it is math.
It's not even like complex math.
No.
I mean, if you have to count like this county versus and this, you have to add those count. If you don't, all together. But at the end of the day, it's addition.
Yeah, they don't let lawyers do that.
Yeah.
There's math in them.
No.
So we're a week out. I don't know what happens from here on out. I cross my fingers every day. I hold my breath that my phone doesn't explode and that nothing else explodes either. And
Right.
I don't really know what the. I just think it's a case of. I mean, and now you're seeing it. And now, of course, now they're. Oh, so my point was, when we come back from break, was, I don't want those enablers. We tend to have a very short memory. Just as Americans as in general.
Yep.
And
Especially
so,
nowadays. With
nowadays with the 24-hour news cycle and all that stuff. So that's my biggest concern. My biggest concern is that the people who enabled this situation to come to the head that it did turn around and say, look, it wasn't that bad. Or
Right.
I'm not sure I remember it the way you do. Or
Yeah,
I didn't
right,
do
and
the
that
things.
becomes-
I mean, we're talking about people just not even believing facts in evidence in front of them that are crystal clear. And you have people who are gonna just wash this away or sweep this under the rug or use whatever analogy you want. That's my other fear. That's my other fear, is that people who thought that this was not a big deal or who helped further fan these flames just get a pass. That's my other fear. It's my concern.
And so what happens is now there's the big political conundrum, right? So it's always like, well, do we want to, because everybody's so we seem to be so divided politically, and because everything is like party related, and if you're not a Democrat, you're Satan
You're the
himself,
enemy. You're
right?
public enemy
Right?
number one. Yeah.
And then the same thing, on the other side, if you're not a Republican, if you're not or even more, if you're not a Trump supporter, if you're not then you're a socialist, then if we can't find that, if we can't figure out some way to kind of like meet in the middle, and that's what politics is, right? It's like it's give and take. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of of the system, in that, I believe one thing, you believe something else, but there's some things that we believe that we agree on, right? And
do we agree on the big picture, right? And then we may agree, we may disagree on how we get there, But to your point, can we find compromise and improve the situation?
Yeah.
Right. That's what it's all about.
And
right?
make it make it better. But right now, it's almost like, everybody needs to kind of put the politics aside, put the partisanship aside, and look at, okay, what are we doing? Like, let's look at the good of the country. And it's not a question of, oh, well, this party is now owns Congress, or this party now owns
No,
the
I
executive branch.
understand that, but I guess my point is, people who have been, literally stoking these fires for the last 4 years, right?
They need to be held accountable.
That's my point. That's my point. There needs to be, you can't all of a sudden say, hey, John, I've been lying to your face for the last 4 years, and I've done everything I can to tear every idea and concept that you have to shreds, and I've been obstructionist, and I've done this, I've done that. I've done everything I can to make what you want to have happen, and I've done everything I can to make sure it doesn't happen. And now that I'm on the losing end, now it's like, well, John, it's time for us to work together. It's time for us to unify, and it's time for us to come together and have our kumbaya moment. And the answer is, wait, time out. You just spent 4 years tearing me, my politics, the things I care about, however you want to define that, to shreds. And now that the tables have turned and you don't hold the upper hand, now it's time for us to sort of unify. And I know that there's two schools of thought. One school of thought is take the high road, right? They go low, we go high, right?
Yeah.
Take the high road. But I don't know. I mean, the other side of it is, look, if it's crystal clear now that the winner makes the rules, if this is the system that we're going to operate under, then there is an argument to be made for, look, for the last 4 years, and again, I'm not saying this is the answer, but there's an argument that says, look, for the last 4 years, we sought compromise. We got nothing. We got the thumb in the eye the whole time. And you know what? Now it's your turn to feel the thumb in the eye. I don't have the answer to which of those. I mean, I know what I'd like to see happen, but at the same time, I say, look, if there's no comeuppance, I don't think that you ever. I mean, why would you ever feel the need to when the tide always turns, right? Why, when it goes back the other way again, why would you ever feel the need to kind of come together and compromise? I mean, if you don't feel the hot stove, right, then why would you ever bother saying, well, maybe we shouldn't do that? And that's sort of how I feel right now, is at the end of 4 years of what we just went through, for people who say, look, this is our time now, right? It's our turn, right? And you guys, ran the table in ways that maybe, destroyed a lot of norms and a lot of traditions, and now all of a sudden you want to get back to those norms and traditions? No, that's not how it works. You don't get your cake and eat it too. This is just I don't know. I'm sort of struggling with the need for revenge, I guess, is my point.
Well, and that's it. And I think and I'm sure that's going to be a common, you're not going to be the only one, right? You're not going to be the only, right? So is it going to be this? Are we going to get to this point where it's like, okay, I need to make sure that that this senator or this representative needs to get put down and stay down, right?
Yeah.
And so the same thing, you could say the same thing with the president, right? Today's, they're voting for the second impeachment, right? They're saying so I think,
and I'm not even sure I'm a fan of that. Like I'm not sure that that's the appropriate. I understand why they're doing it. I'm just not even sure that that's the appropriate path here. I don't know if censure is a better solution. Right. I don't know, because I'm worried about the idea that the impeachment thing just starts getting thrown around. Right?
Well, that's right.
The minute I don't like the decision, it's like,
that's
right. It waters down the impeachment process.
And no one's ever going to get
the gravity of impeachment. Like let's put it in its correct context. Now, the other side of that is stop breaking the law, you won't get impeached, right?
Yeah.
There's absolutely two ways to look at that.
Yeah,
right?
like if you incite an armed insurrection and you don't get impeached, what do you get impeached?
That's exactly right. That's right. At that point, what can you not do, right?
So this this idea of we want to make sure, put the other side in their place to make sure that they know that they were wrong and that they're not going to get away with what they, and then at the same time, there's but remember, we all want to move forward. We all want to make things better. There's other things to worry about, AKA like a pandemic, AKA like foreign threats, like poverty and homelessness, anything. Go down the list of all the you know, the seemingly really, really big problems that we have, like that need our attention, that need, you know, money, that need finance, that need like people like brain power to
Problems that need to be solved.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the challenge, is to say, okay, look, you guys did what you did, and in my mind, I think that you were wrong. Here's what we're going to do about that, and then once that's done,
Yeah.
we're going to move forward.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, that's really where the censure comes in, where you say, look, you know what we're going to do? We'll have the votes for that. We'll have a conversation around that. We'll discuss it. We'll get it absolutely right out front, deal with it, address it, make sure that there is that, you know, historical record, and make sure that people can't just sweep it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen or change the narrative. Or,
Yeah,
and then to your point, then you got to say, look, everybody go home, everybody take a break. We'll come back and be ready to work, right? I mean, that's kind of what you hope. But again, I just have my suspicions that when you do it that way, which is the way from an ideals perspective that we all hope you can behave, what really worries me, what really bothers me
everybody's
is
going
that
to forget.
behind the scenes, when those doors close, there's a lot of laughing and giggling, and they go, well, big deal, I got a censure.
Sure.
Ooh, you know,
Yeah, that does.
that's actually probably going to get me votes when I go back to my district, because
Yeah.
I held it, as opposed to, you know, I tried to overthrow the government. I tried to overthrow the will of, you know, 82 million people as part of an election that had zero problems with it. And
I was part of that. Like,
that's
so,
right.
And I had a hand in that. So in that January 6th, I enabled that.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. That's right. I weaken the knees of democracy by just following on this idea that, you know, facts don't matter anymore, and it's not going to cost me anything. That's the stuff that I worry about, and I worry about that because I think that turns into sort of the rot. You know, these are all things that have all been said. We're not making anything up here. We're not you know, cutting new ground here. But that's the rot that starts to kind of get in and starts to really,
Yeah.
you know, if this was okay before, it's okay again. And I think, to your point, I really think that there needs to be that, you know, the accountability needs to go to the point where somebody says, I think I probably, not only should I not have done that, I'm going to own the responsibility,
Yeah,
and the response is painful enough that somebody else thinks twice and says, you know what happened last time. You probably
Exactly.
want to think this through a little bit. You know.
Exactly. And you know, and at the end of the day, everybody wants their leadership to be able to. They want to be able to trust them. They want to be able to. They want to feel that they're being told
Sure.
the truth.
Yeah.
They want to feel that they're not being connived or lied to or BS'd or.
Look, I get the political ambition. I get they all want to sit in the Oval Office. I understand that. I get all that. But at the end of the day, you know, if getting to that point, you know, makes you.
If you have to compromise your integrity, you have to
Well,
compromise
yeah, which
your
is
character.
a whole like now it's like now who that's a whole nother argument. But anyway, that's the thought. So I think we'll
see what happens.
Well, next week hopefully we'll get back to your very traditional money in the law.
That's right. Money in the law. Money in the law. We're just moving right along.
Moving right along.
Back to work.
We'll be back. We'll be back.
All right. We'll see everybody next week. Thanks for joining us and indulging in political talk today. We'll see everybody next week. Hollis and Cable Access TV. We'll see you next week. You guys, thanks for staying with us.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. On behalf of my partner, Jay Marson, I'm John Drohan. See everybody
Have a great week,
next
everybody.
Saturday.
Take care.